Representative Larson. Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith. Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer.
Here.
Chairman Nicholas.
Okay, the first up is Senate File 96.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Mead with the Water Development Office. Just a refresher, you should have some blue binders in front of you that we've already handed out.
It's right on top of your desk, behind your computer screen. Oh, a new one.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if you turn into the first page there, you'll see a blue sheet. That's a summary sheet of our bill. And then just again, under tab A is just a general description of our program. Tab B is our account balances available for appropriation. And then when we get into tab C and throughout the rest of the binder, those are the actual recommendations and more detail about the individual projects within the planning bill. So I'd refer you back to the blue sheet just inside the front cover. I should mention the bill is right after that blue sheet. So just to go through this here, I'll start off with the first section within that spreadsheet. And these are account one, level one projects in our new development account. We've got 7 projects in that account that equate to $1,596,820. Those are all master plans. Under that second section that we have our level 2 feasibility studies under account one, new development. We've got 2 projects within there for a total of $1,795,000. The third block of projects, and stop me anytime if you have any specific questions you want to ask, is also account 2 rehabilitation. I'm sorry, these are account 2 rehabilitation projects. Level 1 projects, we've got 4 of those that equate to $960,000. Those are master plans mainly for irrigation districts. That fourth block of projects are the level 2 projects in account 2 rehabilitation. We've got 5 of those that equate to $1,633,000. I'll skip to then sections 6 and 7. We have a couple of amendments to existing planning studies, one for the Douglas test well in the amount of $450,000 and one for the Noad River Storage Alkali Creek Reservoir for $420,000. Then take you back to section 5. It says other section 5. And this is the Green River, Little Snake River Basins Conveyance Law Study. And the Select Water Committee, when we were working our bills at our November commission, Select Water Committee amended this into our planning bill. With the reasoning, what this would really do would be $500,000 from the general fund to account 1 to complete this study. And you'll see that it's contingent upon a transfer, and that transfer would actually be effectuated in section 8. But what that would do, it's really a tool that would look at not only conveyance loss within ditches, but also try to put together an assumption of what the actual consumptive use portion of that conveyance loss is, and then be able to apply that throughout the Green River Basin and the Little Snake River Basins. One, to be a tool that could help during a curtailment and regulation through the Colorado River Compact, and then also through identifying some of these ditches that are, I guess, seeping more than others, and that would help inform future projects that could be funded through Upper Colorado River funding programs that would come out of the UCRC. Right now, there's roughly $125 million, I believe, through the Inflation Reduction Act for projects like that in the future. So this is kind of set up to help us identify some of those low-hanging fruit projects in the future. And then I'd take you down to section 9. This was another amendment brought by the Select Water Committee to our planning bill. And this would remove funding of the Board of Control from account 1 and put it back in the general fund. Throughout time, the majority of the time, the Board of Control has been funded through general fund. This equates to nearly a $7.5 million per year. In the time frame of about, yes.
Tell me how many years of each?
Well, I can tell you the years that it's been funded through general fund, and that's been about 1992 through 2002. And then here recently from about 2017 to present. So roughly 15 years of the years we've been in existence, and that's probably been since 1975 or 1982 when we officially became water development. In those years, if you were to add up that amount of funding, those 15 years that we've been funded, or that Board of Control has been funded through the account one, that would equate to about $93 million that's been taken out of account one.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
follow up to that. The water one, that was created in about 2002 or 2003, the water accounts, is that right?
The water accounts were set up back in the early 80s when the program was set up. Account three, dams and reservoirs, was set up in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just as a, I guess to let everybody know, roughly we get 19.3 million per year in account one through the mineral severance tax distribution account, about 3.3 million in account two, and about 775,000 out of that account into account three. So with the 7.5 million taken out, we also fund capitalization grant for the drinking water SRF 10% match to the tune of about 1.3 million per year. And then a number of other through Department of Ag and Upper Colorado River Endangered Fish Program. And then of course, the budget for our office as well. So when you take all those administrative costs and put them together between account one, account two, and account three, we've got roughly $10 million to spend on projects. So by moving that funding back over to the general fund, it would free up another $7.5 million for projects. And account one projects, apologize, I'm not looking this way, are generally municipal type projects. So that's the information there. To move on then to that last section, section 10 of the bill. This was also an amendment brought by the Select Water Committee. And this would be to fund an Upper Colorado River Basin Coordinator position, full-time position within the Water Development Office. That would be for $125,000 one time out of the general fund. And then in future fiscal years, that would be taken out of the Water Development account and out of account one, just like our office budget would be. And then also one time.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Say that again. So after the one time on the 125,000, it's funded how?
After that, it would be out of account one, just like our office budget would be.
So be out of water one.
Yeah, so for fiscal year 24.
So
It would be out
is that out of the same fund that you're trying to move over to general funds?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, no,
Okay,
that would be Board of Control, which is the regulatory arm of the state engineer's office.
very good. Thank you.
And then the other portion of that section 10 is for a one-time $500,000 from the general fund. And that would be to hire any consultants that might be needed. The idea behind the project coordinator and this project consultant support funding would really be similar to the conveyance loss study that I mentioned, and funding that we're anticipating and the state engineer's office is anticipating coming from the Bureau of Reclamation, Upper Colorado River Commission, to get a better handle on Colorado River, make it more drought resilient. So that we anticipate money to come into that program and be available for Wyoming. And this would really be the conduit between the federal government and our local governments like conservation districts to really have the capacity to acquire that federal funding and then work with those local governments and NGOs and so on and so forth to get those projects on the ground and acquire that federal funding.
So my understanding is right now you have two positions that are funded or approved, but not filled. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I think you're thinking of the state engineer's office. And this is the water development office that this particular full-time position would be part of. So it's different. It's not those two that were approved, I believe, last year for the state engineer's office.
Mr. Chairman, so we've got in a committee bill, in a Colorado River committee bill, there's an appropriation for a person and some funding. Is that engineer as well? Or are you familiar with that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that is the state engineer's office, that position as well. Yeah.
So then in the engineer's office, and I'm just making sure that I understand it. So we approved one last year and then, and I know you're not the director, so we approved one last year, then we've got one that was approved this year. Then another. I guess those are all, and I'm just trying to figure out, because they're all supposed, I'm just trying to figure all of this out, and then we come in here. So we have one that we reduced, and we've got another, and there's like 4 additional positions coming into water, either in the engineer's office or here, and I appreciate that they're different. I'm just trying to make sure I understand, and maybe Chairman Eklund can help us out here with all the ones that are going into the state engineer's office. Do we know what those are for?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so the one we discussed,
Come on up to the mic, would you, Mr. Chairman? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the one we discussed, I believe it was yesterday on the Colorado River Task Force. That one goes to the state, will be under the state engineer's purview, if I understand that correctly. And there is going to be one in the Water Development Office. There'll be a liaison, am I correct on that? From the state engineers and on the Colorado River Compact, I believe. And then there's 1 or 2 that aren't filled with the state engineer.
There's one, there's Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Eklund, there was one we approved last year, and and we knew that it's had some difficulty in the engineer's office. Then we approved one, which is a program person this year that it's in our budget bill now. And then there's a 3rd one requested that we amended out. Was it going to go in? What was it going to be for?
Thinking here gets kind of confusing, but Mr. Chairman, yes, the one that got amended out. We've had a jumble of bills. I'm not sure.
And
Better
then
not say.
there's one in the speaker's bill
Yes.
that you talked about. And then there's this one.
Mr. Chairman, I recall one from last year for the state engineer's office was more of a modeling position.
Yeah, I think so.
And I don't know exactly what the one is in the 222, Senate File 222, I think it is. I don't know exactly which one that is, but this one in particular for the Water Development Office would really be just looking at trying to leverage the federal funding piece. I think all the state engineer's office positions are getting more towards regulation and trying to get more of a handle on that.
So did you request to have the funds moved to general funds?
Mr. Chairman, the Select Water Committee added that to the
No,
commission.
as the director, was that a request that you made for them to do that?
No, but I would generally support it because of the lack of funding for our program and the inflation that we're seeing with construction projects and the fact that the mineral severance tax distribution account has really been flat since 2001 and is not keeping up with inflation. So we're continually being able to do less.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm asking that, we love you, Jason. We're so glad you're here. And we're glad you're in this position. And I say that with all sincerity. But in the budget process, in the supplemental budget process, we didn't see any of this. Okay. And typically in the supplemental process, if you're gonna, and I know we add positions and we add money all the time. But it really seems a little interesting in your section 9 particularly, where these aren't appropriations going out to projects in Water 1. These are dealing with your budget. and your administration and things that normally at least for the most part, would come through the budgetary process. And where I've struggled with this just a little bit, and I'm trying to figure out why we've done it this way, is because with the budget process, we really tried to avoid, I mean, do we want the agencies now to start establishing their budget through a subcommittee? Or do we want to, and so help me understand the way you see that working.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as you know, our office is funded through mineral severance tax distribution account. So it's not generally funded like the state engineer's office is generally funded, the majority of state engineer's office. I agree. We come to the Joint Appropriations Committee every year and talk about our budget regardless of where the funding comes from. And yeah, that seems like the appropriate process. When Select Water Committee comes with ideas, we generally accept them or have
We know.
discussions about them, and that's how this came about. So,
Mr. Chairman, the idea of the director had nothing to do with this idea that so I started in 2011 and I saw how water development worked and I saw where the funds went. And then all of a sudden we got into tight times and we needed to balance a budget. And water became water. I've heard that a few times. So water development funds were used to take care of the state engineers, part of the state engineer's budget, and that's what I was used to. So it's really tough to get that bone out of my throat. That's the best way of describing it. So most of that you hear comes from me or comes from other people in the Senate side, I would think.
Chairman, I think we've made it to the end of the bill. We have a blue engrossed copy. Jason, what are the differences from the original as filed at the beginning of the session to what came out of the Senate to us? What was the major change, just so we can highlight that?
yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, there was really just some cleanup on the funding for the state engineer's office. And if we turn to, look here, I believe it's page 12 of the bill. There was a little bit of funding through account 1, that's S1. So if you look, that page is a little hard to follow, but if you see at the top of the page, there's the other funds column. And then you follow that down, there was a $49,906 there, and now it's $24,953. So I believe when that was originally set up, there was a portion of the state engineer and just the administrative funds through the state engineer's office that they said was being used for more or less management of the Board of Control. So what that amendment did was added that, or I should say, took that number out as well, the $24,953 instead of just the $7,129,414. So it added that back in, or it took that out. It also, when you go down to the note at the bottom, note 2, it added, so it reads, it is the intent of the legislature that funds appropriated to the state engineer, and it added for administration. I think before it just said for the Board of Control division. So it just picked up that additional $25,000 more or less. I believe that was about all it did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Eklund, can you tell me how much we put into water 2 or water 3 this year in our budget bill?
Okay. From the mineral distribution?
No, just general fund, just in your amendment.
Oh, general funds, I believe it might have been 30,000.
How much?
30 million, I'm sorry. 1,000 million, what? Yes. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if we only have 3 positions funded. The bill that was brought to us on the Colorado River Compact is codification of what we're doing already. And I'm presuming that they have that position at work already. And so when we brought the bill, we actually are just including the person as well as part of the codification process. I'm not sure of that, but I know one person could probably help us sort it out would be the Speaker Summers.
Mr.
He's not here.
Representative Eklund, so we done the one last year, right? That's the modeler guy.
Okay.
And so there's one, and then we adopted Gov's letter number 8 in this year, so that's 2. And then there was another one that was added in round robin that we've pulled out in an amendment, but that's just keep that note there. And then there's one in the Summers bill. Now, so what I'm trying to, what I'm trying to understand on that is disregard the one from last year. We've kind of got 3 out there. One that we've pulled out on an amendment, one that we've approved, which is a hydraulic modeling, No, which is a one-time for, modeling support services. So I have to eat my words some there, Chairman Eklund. Letter 8 is just for contract services to develop a hydraulic modeling system on the Green River and Little Snake Rivers, okay?
Okay.
And then we have an additional 500,000 in the water bill to do the same, is that right?
Different things.
Mr. Chairman, in the water bill in front of you today, we have 125,000 for a full-time employee to really focus on the funding that's going to come from the federal government that would be eligible for the upper Colorado River Basin within Wyoming, to really focus on that and try to bring that into Wyoming as much as we can, that funding. The 500,000, and that's one time for fiscal year 24. After that, it would come from our office budget out of account 1. The 500,000, a lot of times when you apply for federal funding, it comes with a lot of strings, and you might have to write feasibility studies and do monitoring and what have you if you're provided that funding. So we have a limited resources with our office, so that would allow us to go out to consultants and get some other disciplines if needed.
And I apologize, but I thought when you was explaining the use of this 500 in the bill, this 500,000, that it was to do modeling for the upper Colorado and I thought that included down in the Snake River. Is that not so? Did I misunderstand that?
Mr. Chairman, that would just be support services from consultants to help us get federal funding into the state of Wyoming for projects. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, the conveyance loss study, which is section 5 on your blue sheet here, that's 500,000. And that would really, that again gets back into going out and looking at the ditches, measuring
What's the one?
losses within ditches in the Green River Basin and the Little Snake River Basin to get
That's
a
the
better
one.
handle on consumptive
So
uses.
how is that different from the one they asked for in the budget, which says for contract service, develop hydraulic modeling for the Green River and Little Snake River basins?
This would actually be going out in the field and putting in pressure transducers and measuring what's coming in the ditch, what's going out of the ditch, what are the losses, what can be attributed to consumptive use. That would help inform modeling eventually, because you have to gather data to be able to model scenarios and situations.
So you need both.
Can you see why we're confused?
Mr. Chairman, I can.
So I think it would be useful if we just kind of did a one-pager to explain all of them and where they're at, so we have a full picture of it. And we can know that everything's cross-pollinating together. It'd just be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll get together with the state engineer and we can provide that to you.
And so one of our real issues that we have is section 9. And the idea that we put part of the budget and basically copy it on here as if it's part of the budget bill. I mean,
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I think what the chairman is trying to say is what's up with that?
Might be directed to me. Mr. Chairman, so these were some brainstorming ideas that trying to work COVID funding. You're talking about we have tried to get as much into the water development as we possibly can. The conveyance loss study is probably something that would just be used in mitigation, if I'm understanding that correctly. And I don't know if it's very expensive to do that. That would be a tool in the toolbox for the Colorado River drainage.
I think they're mainly concerned about border control, removing that funding from.
Oh, that. Well, so you heard the figures on it. There's $10 million that we have to work projects with the border control there. The border control costs $7.5 million. And that's, I believe, per year, isn't it? Or biennium per year. And we're just left without as much money as we believe the state needs. We've got projects, good many dams and systems that are 100 years old. And we're really needing to accelerate our program if we can to try to get our infrastructure back up to speed. So that's what that's basically about. And I don't see that the funding mechanism for water development is probably going to change. That's been set for a good many years. And I believe now we're flush flush enough with funds that we should go back to the old system, which I like better, which allowed water development to work using their full amount of money. And then we fund the state engineer out of general funds. And then if we get into a bind again, we do the same thing. We just kind of tighten things up and cut where we have to cut.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Eklund, I share your concern about these aging infrastructures. You mentioned the funding mechanism for the water accounts has been fairly static for many years. What about changing the funding mechanism, say a 1% sales tax on all ag commodities sold, since those are the beneficial users of most of these water projects, and that instead of relying strictly on the severance tax in the mineral industry to improve these irrigation structures?
I probably wouldn't have a big problem with it. An argument or pushback you'd get back from producers is a lot of them don't have irrigation. And they've got a stock well, and most of those are not funded through, they can be, but most of them are funded through. Those people are not necessarily going to want to pay.
So I'm curious, we've got Chief Perkins behind you. I mean, have you seen something like Section 9 much when you were in the Senate? In terms
Is that
of
a question for me, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
that is a question.
Mr. Chairman, on advice of council, I've been advised to refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate. No, Mr. Chairman, I have.
Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Eklund, I think the challenge for this body, and my question will be to you is can you kind of understand our perspective is we respect and appreciate the passion that you have to maintain water infrastructure and all of that. But that's just a component of the overall budgetary needs of the state. And so when we look at all of there's probably not an agency that's not saying the same thing. We just don't have enough to get this done. And And we have to, so I hope you understand why we're having this conversation is because those are the issues that we try to deal with on a regular basis, is try to spread the butter across the whole piece of bread the best we can.
I do.
I
I think that probably all of us are kind of working towards as noble a cause as we can.
So
And it's
John,
tough to be
the,
balanced.
Just going back to section 9, I think what we're going to do is we're gonna amend the bill and put it in, so you're not basically amending laws, chapter 51 of the budget bill. You can ask for these things, but you don't ask for them by amending the budget bill.
Mr. Chairman. If you may, I would like to get the information back on the positions, you know, the stuff we kind of asked for before we start maybe amending the bill or doing anything, but if we could, because in fairness to the conversation, and again, we, you know, what you're telling us is if we could look at all of those positions and what it is you're trying to do with them. So I would maybe table the bill, and then when we get that stuff back, maybe we can start working it. That's just a thought.
Well, yeah, and I'd also like to get like the overall picture and what the chief executive office wants, what the game plan is, so we can just see what the whole plan. Because we want to help you get the plan done, and just so we can understand it better.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
before we table it or take our next action, a question for Jason, just so that I'm fully tracking. If we go to page 11, section 8, so there at the bottom of page 11, there's 500,000 from the general fund to water development 1 is transferred. Then is that the same money that gets appropriated and spent on the bottom of page 13 in subsection B, or is that different fund? So we transferred in one action and then we actually utilize it, the same money, but utilize it in the next action?
Transferred then appropriated.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, the $500,000 in section 8 that's transferred from general fund to account 1 is actually the fund or the money that would go into section 5, the conveyance law study. That would fund the conveyance law study in
It
section
goes
5.
in reverse.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, just a suggestion for your consideration. I know you have another bill to consider today. We could call upon the state engineer possibly while you're looking at that bill and come back to this one in a few minutes and maybe give you a better explanation possibly on the positions.
So that other bill will take about 2 seconds.
Okay.
We're not going to spend a lot of time on it.
We can come back in a day or two.
But,
Let's
yeah,
get this.
we're going to table the bill, and so we can do it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I'm following you. So on the bottom of page, the section 8 money is in section 5. And so then the funds in section 9, the 500,000 or 500,000 in section 9 or section 10, I'm sorry, section 10, is that an additional? That's in addition. So you're appropriating $1 million for 2 different projects or 2 different purposes.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay, I had missed that. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, just to be perfectly clear, it's 1.125 million with the 1 year for the full-time employee.
Yep.
Plus the 500, it's in the other bill, the 650.
Mr. Chairman, for the state engineer's office, yes.
Yeah, the 500. And then we left the 650 for, we only pulled the position, we left the 650 and
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So then if we go to that section 10, if you had the 500,000 to do the work, consulting work, but not the position, can you still get the work done?
Mr. Chairman, I think we could get a portion of the work done. We've taken a position we have in our office right now and kind of retooled it to really get after the bipartisan infrastructure law funding that's becoming available. But we're quickly realizing with the normal duties of that person that we're not giving it the attention it probably deserves. So I think we could we could work on it, but I don't think it would get the attention it would if we had that additional full-time employee.
Mr. Chairman, and
Just one second. Go ahead, Drew.
go ahead, Drew, sorry.
If I can just, I think, add to what Jason just said, I think, as I understand it, that one of the reasons that position is actually will help bring grant money in from the federal government to do this. So this position will more than, I believe will more, you know, I think it would more than pay for itself by bringing additional dollars to do this work with some federal dollars, if I understand.
Is that
Jason
part of the
correct?
5% that you can use of the IIJA dollars, or is it separate grant money?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of the 5% that you're talking about.
Most of those have an allow an administrative.
Yeah.
cost for operations.
We're looking into that. I don't know if we know the answer through the Inflation Reduction Act on whether some of that could be used to fund this in the future instead of our office through account one, but that's something we will be looking into for sure.
Good. All right,
Thanks for your patience.
appreciate it. All right, Dave, you're next.
Yeah. And would you look at the bill?
It's part of those explanations.
Sorry.
Come on up. No, let's do it after Dave. So tell us what the on the volunteer plan. What's currently using your your projections of when it will be 100%. What have those changed from last year, or what is the status?
We're told it's going down the toilet fast.
No, that's not correct. Well, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, I'm Dave Swindell from the retirement system. The volunteer plan is currently funded at the last time we measured it at 81.3%. It's on a good trajectory. It has what I call speed. As you always look at position where you're at, direction, positive in this case, and speed, pretty rapid, really. We projected it would be hit 100% in 2029, just 6 years from now. Now, there has been some adverse experience. We modeled that, okay, that's going to set the fund back unless you get a recovery. I think there will be a recovery. There has been, actually. Mr. Chairman, I should inform you and the committee, the retirement system is probably going to post a return when all the dust settles in 2022 as of December 31st of minus 6.99%. But the S&P 500 is already up 7% since the first of the year. And that's why we always present to you actuarial smooth results. So you don't get too excited about that 17% gain in 2021 or 7% loss. It smooths out. So no, it's not, Representative Larson, no, it's not going in the toilet.
So, so under your current model, you're still at 2029.
When the projections come out, they'll upset that quite a bit. Yeah, you can be looking at 2046. That's the nature of those long-term projections because the actuaries can't project a recovery.
Mr. Chairman.
But the real comparison is kind of with the bill or without the bill. And you can look at that with last year's analysis or next year's analysis. And the difference is going to be about 4 years either way.
4 years, how'd you get to 2046 though? That's set 17 years, 16 years.
Well, that's if you have an adverse experience like we have and you don't model recovery, because in the end, you aren't going to average 6.8% return over the next 20 years or so if you don't get a recovery.
But I guess what your point is, the recovery's already happened.
Well, we'll see if it holds. But that, I think, the prospects of achieving 6.8% from here are better. Interest rates are higher. We're getting coupon returns off of fixed income for the first time, and the stock market, seems to have priced in a soft landing. I don't know if it'll hold. We never do. But right now, using last year's analysis, the fund would be on track to hit 100% in 2029. It would be better if 9 million was added to it. They get there in 2025. Another way to look at it is, well, let's put in a loss for 2022 and not assume a recovery. The plan won't reach 100% then until 2046.
So
If there were 9 million in it, it hit it in 2031.
if you use
So-
that, if you use that logic on the big plan, we need to probably put in 150 or 200.
Right.
So
I think, Mr. Chairman, that what I would advise the committee is just look at the comparison between the two plans, pick a scenario and look at the comparison. The 9 million obviously helps. But to Representative Larson's comment, no, the fund will be fine without the 9 million. It would be better if you had it. And that's pretty obvious.
Mr. Chairman. So, Dave, the reason we're getting all of this information back because the firefighters think that it's going to hell in a handbasket. And the information we got is actuaries estimate the Fire A benefit population will not reach, that Fire A beneficiaries won't reach zero till 2083. And so we're not going to see those funds come back in. And then we move the 2046. Status quo is with a 5.5% adverse experience in 2022. It looks like 2046 is when it's funded. And we're, last year when we had this intense conversation, tried to resolve Fire A and think that we accomplished a great feat. This wasn't a huge deal, but it was a critical part of the funding. And so our volunteer firemen are saying, well, we've talked to retirement and, we're in a world of hurt, we're losing. They don't understand the 81.3, which is not bad, but they think it's horrible. And they say, we're not going to get a COLA, right? We're not going to get a COLA for till 2046. And they don't understand they're not going to get a COLA because it's not designed for a COLA. But we somehow have to have some information because I think we've deviated from the course of what this committee, joint committee, and retirement system and the firefighting community established to resolve that thing. And we don't know how to, we don't know how to answer. I don't know how to answer these questions. And so,
well, they're taking your worst case scenario and saying that that's reality. And so basically, when you presented that number to them, now they're using that as a tool to get their money. That's just what happens.
Mr. Chairman, it might be helpful. I've got a one-page printout with all this kind of laid out in a
Great.
so can I approach the dais? And
Yeah.
I've got one for the record.
I mean, we are now right in line with knocking baby seals in the head.
We're the cruelest of all.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Once he finds his seat again. Mr. Chairman, to ask the question maybe a different way, and you said it earlier in your testimony, you don't make assumptions based on a one-year issue, just like a year ago you didn't. You have patted yourselves on the back, but you didn't start to head off to the beach based on a 17% return a year ago. And by the same token, you don't make assumptions based on this year where you're showing a minus 5.5 adverse reaction or whatever it is. And yet in your fiscal note, I feel like you via fiscal note lobbied for the 9 million by putting this adverse contingency in there saying without the 9 million, now all of a sudden the plan, it will never recover until 4046 because of the 1 year we had. And yet just a year ago, you were also tempering your reaction to the tremendously high year. And if you average the 2 years, you're still on a positive track of over 7%, over what, almost over 10%, I think it is. And so you're still in a pretty darn good position, but yet you in this fiscal note, like I said, I feel like it's almost via fiscal note lobbying for the 9 million because you don't paint the reality picture of how you actually do this. And you said it in your testimony. You do it over multiple years for a softening effect because you know if you look at it from a year to year, and I'm paraphrasing, that it will drive all of us crazy because it's so erratic. But when you do it over multiple years, then it smooths itself and it shows just what you said as you started your testimony of it has good speed, it's on a good trajectory with or without the $9 million. Yet you, to the good Representative Larson's point, when you put in that note about it now all of a sudden isn't fully funded till 2046, then everyone starts to think the sky is falling because you used a 1 year number. And I don't understand why, knowing you don't use 1 year numbers, why in this fiscal note you used a 1 year number.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, first of all, if that was conveyed, it's not my role to lobby. Try to just present the facts, and that's all we were trying to do. At the time the bill was proposed and we wrote the fiscal note, everyone was aware that 2022 is going to be a market loss. And it is a fact that the Joint Appropriation Committee will receive reports in this summer, and they're going to incorporate that now 7% loss. And the long-term projections are going to look really bad. That's what happened in 2018 when we had a loss of 3.5%. Suddenly the 30-year projection was kicked way out. Well, it recovered within a year or two. So I was just trying to provide the facts that that's what the actual reports are going to say. I think a good way to look at it is to look at either scenario and just compare column 1 to column 2 or column 3 to column 4. And you can just see what $9 million does to the fund. That's all. And you can see it's better off with 9 million. But no, to Representative Larson's comment, the fund's going to be fine without it. It would be better if it had, and those are just fiscal facts. And it's not my place to say what's the highest and best use of public money. I can just describe 9 million in the plan. This is what it would do under a couple of scenarios.
Mr. Chairman. So Director Swindell, I guess maybe I struggle with columns 1 and 3, because column 1 says funding ratios under standard assumed conditions, and it has 2022 at 81.3%. And then column 3 says funding ratios with adverse experience. For 2022, it still lists it as being 81.3% funded. So I don't get, if the percent funded is the same on the first row of columns 1 and column 3, how does that occur? I would expect the 81 to be lower than 81.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiff, that's probably a mistake on my part for not clearly delineating that when I say year, I mean 1 January 2022. So that's before the market loss. So that's the same for all the scenarios because that was in the books.
Mr. Chairman.
So really just look at 2023, the next year. That'd be as of 1 January 2023, which incorporates your loss of December 31, 2022. I'm sorry, that was confusing.
And so, Dave, where did we come up with the 9? What does the 9 million represent?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, in my recollection of the Fire A conversations, when there was a diversion of the revenue from the volunteer fund to the Fire A solution, There was a calculation as to, and that reduction put the volunteer fund, it set it back from its projected 100% attainment year. And at that time, it was estimated that it would take a lump sum contribution of $9 million to restore that trajectory. That's all. So it's really, that number is a legacy of from a year ago. And
But the number doesn't make sense because we went from basically 81%. Well, we went, I think the loss in income only went down by about $1.5 million or 2 million.
it's about $2 million a year, Mr. Chairman.
And so theoretically, if we just put the loss back, so we added an extra $1 million or 2 million a biennium, that would get us there as if we didn't. So that's why the 9 doesn't make sense to me. I mean, what you're doing is that you're front loading what we took out by, instead of just putting back the 2 million.
The 3 million.
But although I should point out, Mr. Chairman, it's a flow of 2 million per year. So 9 million and yeah, it represents about 4.5 years of revenue.
What's the total amount of contributions we receive annually from the participants?
I'll have to refer to my sheet here.
3 million from the state.
Mhm.
Actually, the state, it's actually more than 3 million. Like it was, the highest was 5 million, but then when it
Well,
went down,
it's
when it's
The 60%.
it's about 3 million. But to me,
The number I have here, Mr. Chairman, is about $1 million
about $1 million.
coming from contributions as opposed to the state's contribution.
How much is being paid out?
Benefits last year. We paid out $7 million.
7 million?
Yes, sir.
Let's see, what's the size of the fund now? So what's the earnings on the fund?
The market value of assets was 108 million. Actuarial value smooth 97, call it 98 million. So call it roughly 100 million, do the math. Our 6.8% return would be, about 6.8 million a year just off investment earnings. And so you add the state's contribution and then the other contributions. It's why the fund grows.
So what's the other thing that's interesting about this, Dave, is that this is the only retirement plan that gets free money. Just out of the largesse of the state. And so then when we tinker with the free money, it seems like they howl like, cats on a hot tin.
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree with that, but I suggest I should probably stay silent on the advice of counsel. But the committee should be aware, it's exactly what Mr. Chairman said. This is the only pension fund that gets any direct infusion like this. And it's because it's not based on wages. These are volunteers and there's reasons for that, but it is unique in that regard.
So it still amazes me that one down year changes your trajectories by 17 years. And is that just because of the smallness of the fund and how what's your long-term trajectory on your payouts?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I think you will see similar things in all the funds. The next year's funding ratio, I think we're at 77% in the big plan. With this loss, we're going to be at 77.3. It's actually going to go up a little bit, and that's because of the smoothing effect. But once you get out past 5 years, you lose that impact, and then it's like playing crack the whip. The loss here magnifies a great deal out in the out years. And if there is no recovery, that means you did not achieve an average of 6.8%. If you were to look at it, say a 10-year mark, you have a -7, and then you have 9 years of +6.8. And that's what the actuaries are going to model. Well, your average return during that thing is just 5.5%. And that is going to slow down the projections. But as Representative Walters pointed out, we tend not to try to get too excited about that because we do think that 6.8% is a long run, average, reasonable rate of return. Markets will recover, and over a longer period of time, that will even out.
So at a 6.8%, you go back to column 1.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so under that same analogy, will a positive, if a negative year has such a down impact on the fund out at 5 years and 10 years, will a positive year have the same whiplash effect as you just described in a positive fashion in those 5 and 10 years? You know, if that you're 17% last year that you talked about, will that have that same kind of an effect, but in the positive? Or is it the negative drags it down and the positive really doesn't bring it up?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, it can go either way. If you're able to hang on to the gain and incorporate that into your actuarial rate of return, in other words, if you don't lose it, then yes, it makes those projections much smoother. And I guess the thing that I would think the committee should understand, that even sometimes it's hard for even pension folks to understand, that it's all about deviation from the plan. The plan is +6.8. If you get a -7, that's 13.8% off the plan. It's a bigger loss than just -7 because it's compared to where you expected to be or wanted to be or projected to be. So to have a similar impact, you would need to be 13% above the plan, which means above 6.8. So you're looking at a gain of 20%, 21%, something like that, to have a similar effect as a -7. But when you look at it as deviation from the plan, yes, the positive and negatives work out equivalently.
Well, I think that answers my question.
Thanks, Steve.
I appreciate it. Hopefully that's helped you. I love the firemen. I'm sorry they caused a little bit of issues
No,
sometimes.
we're going to tell them that you're a liar.
Is there anything else I can help the committee with this evening?
No, that's great. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the relationship.
Okay, real quickly, let's grab our other bill. File 57. Any public comment?
No. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Okay, that was tough. Who wants to carry the bill on
I
the
do.
floor? Okay, sure.